Last week we actually talked about the bronze serpents, how actually God actually ordered Moses to actually make the pole, and anyone who looks at it will live. I think that's where we actually stopped. So we're going to take a look at it from Numbers chapter 21, starting from verse 10. And the people of Israel set out and camped in Oboth. And they set out from Oboth and camped at Le-Aborim in the wilderness that is opposed Moab towards the sunrise. From there they set out and camped in the valley of Zered. From there they set out and camped on the other side of the Arnon, which is in the wilderness that extends from the border of Amorites. For the Arnon in the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Therefore it is said in the book of the war of the Lord, Wahab in the Supah and the valley of Arnon, and said the slope of the valley that extends the seat of Ur, and learns to the border of Moab, and from there they continued to Beer. And this is well of which the Lord said to Moses, Gather the people together so that I may give them water. Then Israel sang this song, Spring up, O well, sing to it, the well that is princes made, that the noble of the people dug with the scepter and with their staff. And from the wilderness they went on to Mattanah, and the Mattanah to Naphtaliel, from the Naphtalier and Bemoth, and from the Bemoth to the valley lying in the region of Moab by the top of Pisgah that looks down on the desert. So they traveled throughout the wilderness and then close to the Moab area, where they're kind of like in between the border of Moab and the Amorites. And they reached where? They reached a place called Beer. Where is this place? Do you know? Where is this Beer? Never heard of this place? Have you ever heard of the place called the Beersheba? Where did you hear about the Beersheba? Obviously you learned a while back, and that's why I'm referencing. Where did you hear about this Beersheba? It just sounds familiar. You think you heard of it in the past? Long time ago. It was actually you learned about this particular place in Genesis, actually. Where in the Genesis you heard about it? Let's take a look at where. Where? There are actually, that's not exactly the place, but very close. Correct. So when you actually turn to chapter 21 from Genesis, there was a treaty that Abimelech actually made with Abraham. And when you turn to verse 30 and on, he said, "These 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this may be a witness for me that I dug this well." Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because they both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba, and Abimelech and Pichol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. So Beersheba, Beer means it's a well. Sheba means 7, or actually the covenant they made. So this place is where Abraham settled, Beersheba. So this is the place where they came back in Numbers here. So when they dug up the well, their water came up. So this is the place they got the water. And this is the place where they actually had the treaty with the Philistine as well. So this is the place, the Beer is where this place is. Continue on from verse 21 from Numbers chapter 21. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, "Let me pass through your land. You will not turn aside into field or vineyard. We will not drink water of a well. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed through your territory." But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. He gathered all his people together and went on against Israel to the wilderness and came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. And Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possessions of his land and from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as the Ammonite, for the border of the Ammonites was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel settled in all the cities of Amorites, in Heshbon, and in all its villages. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and taken all his land out of his hand, as far as the Arnon. Therefore he Bala the singer say, "Come to the Heshbons, let it be built, let the city of Sihon be established." For fire came out from Heshbon, flame from the city of Sihon. It devoured Ar and Moab, and swallowed the heights of the Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You are undone, O people of Chemosh. He has made his sons fugitives, and his daughters captives, to an Amorite king Sihon. So we overthrew them. Heshbon as far as Dibon perished, and we laid water as far as Nopha. Fire spread as far as Medeba. Though Israel lived in the land of Amorites, Moses sent to spy out Jazer, and they captured the villages and dispossessed the Amorite who were there. Then they turned and went up by the way Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against them, he and all his people, to battle Edrei. But the Lord said to Moses, "Do not fear him, for I have given him into your hand, and all his people and his land, and you shall do to him as you did to Sihon king of Amorite, who lived in Heshbon." So they defeated him and his sons and all his people until he had no survivor left, and they possessed his land. So I don't know if you pay attention to all the stories of the Numbers. As I mentioned at the beginning, when I actually started the number, this book talks about the journey in the wilderness. But when you look very close, the story of the Numbers are like almost the 38 years in the wilderness. When you look carefully, beginning of the Numbers is almost when they actually came out of Egypt and how they actually started the journey, what God had done for them, how they actually rebel against the God. So it's a beginning of the journey. And when you start to turn to somewhere around chapter 20, it's almost at the end of the journey. So there's nothing in the middle. Almost like from, 36 years or 37 years of their wilderness life skipped. There's no body. It's like a head and tail. There's no body in between, because this is almost at the end of their journey. So you have to look at this. Most of the people think that, this is a journey of the Israel's journey in the wilderness. So there must be very detailed story of every incident. That's not true. It only talks about the beginning of the journey and end of the journey. There's nothing in between. What happened? We don't know, because there's no record in any of the books. You probably didn't notice it. But anyhow, even though this latter part of the almost the tail end of the journey, so what changed from the beginning of the journey to the end of the journey is throughout the almost 37 years of their wilderness life, or 38 years of their wilderness life, they continued to rebel against the God. But what they had learned is they started to learn how the pillar of a cloud moves and pillar of fire moves. They move together along. So when they were in Egypt, the very first generation of the Israelites, when they were in Egypt, they lived the way they wanted to live. There was no law, there's no guidance, there's nothing. So they just pretty much did what they want. But as they coming out of Egypt and living in the wilderness and living with the Lord for 38 years, what they learn is there's nothing they can do. There's nothing that can, to grow any plants. They can't actually dug up the well. There's nothing. All they have to learn is following the Lord. When the pillar of cloud moves, they move. Pillar of cloud stops, they stop. That's what they learned in the wilderness. And the second generation of the people, either they were, very young when they came out of Egypt, or the people who were born in the wilderness, what they saw, what they learned is not the way they live, the way they want to live, but guided by the Lord's way. That's what they learned. So at the beginning, the first generation was always complaining, but in the middle, or the majority of their journey, they started to learn, we have to follow. When God leaves, we leave. When God stops, we stop. That's what they learned. So at the end, they started to win the battle. They're just keep failing in the beginning, but at the end of the journey, they started to win the battle because they're following the Lord's way. They're not just doing the way they think they should be doing. They start to ask the Lord, what should we do? Are you going to hand them over to us, over to our hands? Then we go. It's not like, we numbered a lot, so let's go and wage against them. No, it's not like that. They asked the Lord, are you going to hand this people over to us, Lord? I will. Then they start to go and fight the battle. Regardless of how strong they are, how weak they are, it doesn't really matter. It just, when God says do it, we do it. Regardless of what we feel or what we think. That's what they started to learn. So at the end, as they started to follow the Lord's way, now their life started to go against the losing and failing versus now they're started to winning the battle. Not always the case, but you're going to get to see how actually things changing. But now, at the end of the journey, now they're having the war against another the countries, and now started to actually winning this, and they're actually taking down the people, and they take the possessions of theirs. Chapter 22. Then the people of Israel set out and camped in the plains of Moab, beyond the Jordan at Jericho. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was in great dread of people, because they were many. Moab was overcome with fear of the people of Israel. And Moab said to the elder of Israel, and Moab said to the elders of Midian, This horde will now lick up all that is around us, and as the ox licks up the grass of the field. So Balak, son of Zippor, who was the king of Moab at the time, sent messenger to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river of the land of the people of Ammon, to call him, saying, Behold, a people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the earth, and they are dwelling opposite me. Come now, curse this people for me, since they are too many for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them from the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he who you curse is cursed. So the elder of Moab and the elder of Midian departed with the fees for divinations in their hand, as they came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message. And he said to them, Lodge here tonight, and I will bring back word to you, as the Lord speaks to me. So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam, and God came to Balaam and said, Who are these men with you? And Balaam said to God, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, Behold, the people has come out of Egypt, and it covers the face of the earth. Now come curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to fight against them and drive them out. God said to Balaam, You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the prince of Balak, Go to your own land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. So the prince of Moab rose and went to Balak and said, Balaam refused to come with us. Once again, Balak sent princes more in numbers and more honorable than these. And they came to Balaam and said to him, Thus says Balak, the son of Zippor, Let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will surely do you great honor. Whatever you say to me, I will do. Come, curse this people for me. But Balaam answered and said to the servant of Balak, Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the command of the Lord my God to do less or more. So, too, please stay here tonight, that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, If the men have come to call you, arise, go and with them, but only do what I tell you. So Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkeys and went with the prince of Moab. But God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as his adversary. So he was riding on a donkey, and 2 servants were with him. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with the drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the road and went into the field. The Balaam struck the donkey to turn her into the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in the narrow path between the vineyard, with the wall in either side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed against the wall and pressed the Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled, and he struck the donkeys with his staff. Then the Lord opened his mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, What have I done to you, that you have struck me these 3 times? And Balaam said to the donkey, Because you have made a fool of me, I wish I had a sword in my hand, and I then would kill you. Then the donkey said to Balaam, Am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Is it my habit to treat you this way? And he said, No. Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in a way, with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed down and fell on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to oppose you, because your way is perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely just now I would have killed you and let her live. Then Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned for you. I did not know what you stood in the road against me. Now, therefore, if it is evil in your sight, I will turn back. And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, Go with them, but speak only the word that I will tell you. So Balaam went on with the princes of Balak. When Balak heard Balaam had come, he went out to meet him, the city of Moab, on the border formed by the Arnon, at the extremity of the border. And Balak said to Balaam, Did I not send you to call you? Why did you not come to me? Am I not able to honor you? Balaam said to Balak, Behold, I have come to you. Have I now any power of my own to speak anything? The word that God puts in my mouth that I must speak. Then Balaam went with Balak, and they came to Kiriath Huzoth. And Balak sacrificed oxen and sheep, and sent for Balaam and for the princes who were with them. And in the morning Balak took Balaam and brought him up to Bamoth Baal, and from there he saw a fraction of the people. And Balaam said to Balak, Build for me here 7 altars, and prepare for me here 7 bulls and 7 rams. Balak did as Balaam said, and Balak and Balaam offered on each altar a bull and ram. And Balaam said to Balak, Stand beside your burnt offering, and I will go. Perhaps the Lord will come to meet me, and whatever he shows me I will tell you. And he went to the bare height, and God met Balaam. And Balaam said to him, I have arranged the 7 altars, and I have offered on each altar a bull and a ram. And the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, Return to Balak, and though you shall speak. And he returned to him, and behold, he and all the princes of the Moab were standing beside his burning altar. And Balaam took up his discourse and said, From Aram Balak has brought me, the king of Moab, from the eastern mountains. Come, curse Jacob for me, and come, denounce Israel. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? For from the top of the crags I see him. From the hills I behold him. Behold the people dwelling alone, and not counting itself among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, or number the 4th part of Israel? Let me die the death of the upright, and let me end be like this, and like his. And Balak said to Balaam, What have you done to me? I look you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have done nothing but bless them. And he answered and said, Must I not take care to speak what the Lord put in my mouth? And Balak said to him, Please to come with me in another place from which you may see them. You shall see each a fraction of them, and shall not see them all. To curse them for me from there. And he took him to the field of Zopim, to the top of Pisgah, and built a 7th altar, and offered a bull and ram on each altar. Balaam said to Balak, Stand here beside your burnt offering while I meet the Lord over there. And the Lord met Balaam and put a word in his mouth, and said, Return to Balak, and though shall you speak. And he came to him, and behold, he was standing beside his burnt offering, and princes of Moab with him. And Balak said to him, What has the Lord spoken? And the Balaam took up his discourse and said, Rise, Balak, and hear. Give ear to me, O son of Zippor. God is not man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken? Will he not fulfill it? Behold, I receive a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot revoke it. He has not beheld misfortune in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. The Lord their God is with them, and the shout of the king is among them. God brings them out of Egypt, and is for them like the horn of the wild ox. For there is no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel. Now it shall be said of Jacob and Israel, what has God wrought? Behold, a people as a lioness is rise up, and as a lion it lifts itself. It does not lie down until he has devoured the prey and drunk the blood of the slain. And the Balak said to Balaam, do not curse them at all, and do not bless them at all. But Balaam answered Balak, did I not tell you all that the Lord says that I must do? And Balak said to Balaam, come now, I will take you to another place. Perhaps it will place the God, that you may curse them for me from there. So Balak took Balaam to the top of Peor, which is overlooked the desert. And the Balaam said to Balak, build for me here 7 altars, and prepare for me here 7 bulls and 7 rams. And the Balak did the Balaam had said, and offered a bull and a ram on each altar. When Balaam saw that it pleases the Lord to bless Israel, he did not go, as at other times, to look for omens, but set his face towards the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes and saw Israel camping the tribe by tribe. And the Spirit of God came upon him, and he looked and took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eyes open, the oracle of him who hears the word of God, who sees the visions of the Almighty, falling down with his eyes uncovered. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your encampments, O Israel, like palm groves that stretch afar, like garden beside a river, like aloes that the Lord has planted, like cedar trees beside the water. Water shall flow from his buckets, and his sea shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt, and is for him like the horn of the wild ox. He shall eat up the nations, his adversary, and shall break their bones into pieces, and pierce them through with his arrows. He crouched, he lay down like a lion, and like the lioness, who will arouse him up. Blessed are those who bless you, and cursed are those who curse you. And Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam, and he struck his hands together. And Balak said to Balaam, I called you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have blessed them these 3 times. Therefore now flee to your own place. I said, I will certainly honor you, but the Lord has held you back from honor. And Balaam said to Balak, did I not tell your messenger whom you sent to me? If Balak should give me his house full of silver and gold, I would not be able to go beyond the word of the Lord to do either good or bad of my own will. What the Lord speaks, that will I speak. And now, behold, I am going to my people. Come, I will let you know what this people will do to your people in the latter days. And he took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eyes is open, the oracle of him who hears the word of God and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty, falling down with his eyes uncovered. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. It shall crush the forehead of Moab, and break down all the son of Seth. Edom shall be dispossessed. Seir also, his enemy, shall be dispossessed. Israel is doing valiantly, and one from Jacob shall exercise dominion, and destroy the survivor of the cities. Then he looked at Amalek, and took up his discourse and said, Amalek was the first among the nation, but its end is utter destruction. And he looked on the Kenites and took up his discourse and said, Enduring is your dwelling place, and your nest is set in the rock. Nevertheless, Cain shall be burned, and when Asher takes you away captive. And he took up his discourse and said, Also, who shall live with God does this? But ships shall come from Kittim, and shall afflict Ashur and Eber, and he too shall come to utter destructions. Then Balaam rose and went back to his place, and Balak also went his way. So, it's a long story from chapter 22 to chapter 24. Okay, so let's just open up our conversations with the story that we have heard. And if you want to start with the question, let's start with the question. All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So who else has the question? So let me just hear all the questions, and we'll start to talk about some things. Balaam's case is slightly different because he did not come out of Egypt, right? But he was living in a different places, which is when we hear actually in chapter 22, so verse 5, when you look at this, they sent a messenger to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the people of Ammon, to call him. So near the river, this river is Euphrates. This is actually towards the Babylon area. So that's where he was from. He is not from Israel. He's not from Egypt. He's from the Euphrates, which is the area where all the Babylonians used to live. So it's definitely not. It is not Israelites for sure. But he is at the time was very well known by the many other countries. Then when he gives the oracles, when he blesses, the certain people, they're blessed, and when he cursed, they're cursed. That's why the king of Moab, Balak, was actually sent the people to call him in, because he heard this news from a lot of different people, and his fame was already there in the countries at the time. So he actually, sent people to call him in to curse the Israelites. But he was somebody at the time. I mean, he had the power. He does not have the power of God, but he had the power to perform certain things. Remember when Moses and Aaron was sent to Egypt, when he performed the turning the staff to a snake? There are the people from Egypt. They were able to do the same thing, right? They were able to perform certain magic, up to a certain point, right? So there was a lot of magicians at the time as well, and he is someone like that. But he is very powerful in his way, that he was able to actually give the curse or the bless to the people, and then it was done the way he said it to be done. But even though he's not the worshiper of Yahweh, but when he was called in by Balak, and he was actually asking for guidance from the Lord, and Lord actually gave him a guidance and spoke to him as if he spoke to Moses, and he was able to actually perform all this. Not perform, but he was able to actually give the oracles to Israel and surrounding countries as well. So from that perspective, this person, this Balaam, is just very faithful and although he's not Israelites, and he's the kind of person who actually obedience to God. Actually, when you look at it, it's more obedience than Israelites, in a sense, right? Yeah. So, one thing that we need to pay attention here is, let's just take a look at how many chapters in the in book of Numbers. So, Numbers, when you look at it, there are the last chapter of Number is 36, right? There are 36 chapters in Numbers. And out of that 36 chapters, the story of Balaam was spent for three chapters. Chapter 22, chapter 23, chapter 23. Right? Out of a chapter 36, about Balaam was actually written for 3 chapters, which is a significant amount of, portions in the Numbers. Close to like 10%, right? Somewhere around the 8% of the book was spent the story of Balaam. That's significant. There's no other story that we have seen so far, right? Any incidents, any particular story was not exceeding more than 1 chapter. But story of Balaam was like spent for 3 chapters in this book. I mean, that's quite a lot. So the question is, why did God spend so much focus on this Balaam? What's so important that he had to spend like 3 chapters of this book? There's no other story that spanned across like 3 chapters in Numbers, nor from, even from other books. What's so important? Is that really important that we need to know about this story? Is that why God spent so much time, and chapters like this to describe the oldest details of this story? But what I'm saying is, it's a lot of portions has been spent for this Balaam. Okay, so let's talk about what's so important about this Balaam. So let's talk about this from the story here. So go back to the chapter 22, Numbers chapter 22. So the people of Israel set out and camped in the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan at Jericho. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. So Balak, the king of Moab, was acted upon for some on this. So what was this actually? Why did actually Balak call the Balaam? Yeah, he was a scare. So he was a scare because he heard, what Israelite had done to, king of Shihon and the Og, right? He heard how they destroyed the kings and his people and took the possessions of their land, right? So he was afraid. Because remember, not only this story, but the surrounding countries heard what God had done through these Israelites. Not only at the time, the most strong and powerful country in that area was Egypt. Egypt was the most powerful countries of all around combined, because they're the most, it's like America now here, United States. The United States is the most powerful country in all whole world. This is why, the U.S. is not something that you can overlook, right? That's why people are coming to U.S. for certain things. At the time, Egypt was like that. Egypt was the most powerful countries of all around combined. But then God punished them and destroyed them. And then as he was coming out of Egypt, and then as he was coming through the wilderness, and he just destroyed the two other countries, and then Moab's king saw what happened. So it is obvious for him that actually when they wage, through their land, he knew exactly what would happen to him. So he was afraid. So let's take a look at a few things here. So Balak was actually calling Balaam. So you mentioned about Balak, son of Zippor. So who is this Balak? When obviously we know who Balak is, right? Balak is the king of Moab. So he called Balaam. So there's a few things we have to actually learn about this Balak. Balak, his name Balak, is really unclear, but the meaning of his name Balak is devastator. His meaning of his name Balak is devastator, or lay waste. Wherever he goes, just lay waste. He just completely destroys people. Okay? And based on, we don't know for sure how it was, but at least we can tell by his name that I guess he's not a kind of like person who's a very weak, right? But somehow he was just afraid of the Israel. It doesn't matter how strong he was and how he actually won the battle against the other countries. Doesn't really matter. But he was actually, sounds like he was a very strong, man, and his people were very strong. But it's just, we don't know exactly what happened to him. But he was afraid. So he's father, obviously, he was the Moabite as well. And then he called, and where he called the Balaam from, he was calling from the land of Babylonians, so close to Euphrates River. So that's where he was called from. So which is the east side of it, not the west side of it, but the east side of it, right? So obviously, when you actually heard east, and obviously direction is towards the sin, towards the rebellious. So you can see where they're coming from, the east side, not the west side. The God side is the west, the sinful side is the east. So he called in from the east side. And then when he sent, the first thing that they said, the princes said, verse 6, it said, "Come now, curse this people for me, since they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them from the land. And I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed." Well, doesn't it sound somewhat familiar from somewhere we heard? When you turn to Genesis chapter 12, Genesis chapter 12, when he called Abram, now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So what did God say to Abram? Anyone who blesses you, I will bless them. Anyone who curses you, I will curse them. Well, isn't that very similar to what we are hearing? What Balaam was actually doing? Say, I know whoever you curse will be cursed, and whoever bless, that they are blessed. So since I don't think I can win against this Israel, I want to borrow your power, the spiritual power, then brings upon me. So when you bless, I know they will be blessed, but when you curse, and I think, even though I may not be stronger than them, but because you curse them spiritually, I may be able to defeat them. So that's the whole purpose. So what he wanted, the Balak wanted, was spiritual curse. He did not ask for more armies or support. He just wanted he's a spiritual curse. That's all he wanted it. So he did not ask for any more weapons or like supports or other, the support from other countries, not adding more armies, nothing like that. It was just all he needed was a spiritual curse. That's all he needed. So at the time, he trusted, he believed that a spiritual curse will be enough for them to defeat Israel. So when he went there, Balaam asked, verse 8, it said, and he said to them, lodge here tonight. I will bring back word to you as the Lord speaks to me. So once again, Balaam is not Israelites, or he's not the person who trusts or believe in the Lord, but he acted somewhat weird that he said he's going to ask the Lord to see what he's going to say. Stay here, I will speak to him first, and then let's see what he has to say. So the people stayed and lodged at his house, and then he went to the Lord and asked. So verse 10, it said, and Balaam said to God, Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, behold, the people has come out of Egypt, and it covers the face of the earth. Now come, curse them for me, perhaps I shall be able to fight against them and drive them out. God said to Balaam, you shall not go with them, you shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So, not only Balaam went to the Lord and asked for guidance, God spoke to this prophet and spoke to him, responding to his request, as if God is actually talking to his own prophet, almost treating Balaam as God's prophet. He spoke to him as, no, don't do anything stupid, they're blessed the one, so don't even curse. So he took the word from the Lord and relayed that exact message to the prince who came with them and said, verse 13, so Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, go to your own land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. So princes of Moab rose and went to Balak and said, Balaam refused to come with us. So they brought all these treasures and gold and silver to bring this Balaam so that he can curse the Israelites, but he refused. But rather, taking the money or the fees of the divination, he refused to go. So he was listening to what God said. So Balak, okay, maybe this money or the fee that I'm actually giving him, it is not enough for him. So maybe just I will send more money. With the more novel people, he may listen. So he sent another group of people more novel than the first group of people, and with more money. And verse 16 says, And he came to Balaam and said to him, Though, says Balak, the son of Zippor, let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will surely do you a great honor, and whatever you say to me, I will do. Come curse this people for me. So what he's saying is, I will honor you. I will give you whatever you ask. It's almost like giving him a blank check, right? It's like, say whatever you want to say. I'll give it to you. Or I'm not going to just set the fee for you, but you tell me whatever you ask, I'll give it to you. But then, verse 18. But Balaam answered and said to the servant of Balak, Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the command of the Lord my God to do less or more. So what is he saying? Even though you bring all this gold and silver, I can't do what you asked me to do unless God tells me. And he actually calls it, I could not go beyond the command of the Lord my God. Really? Yahweh is your God? Really? Does that mean, do you actually treat Yahweh, the God of Israel, as your God? Well, it sounds like it's better than the Israelites. Although the Israelites are denying God, but he's actually saying, my God. So that kind of shows, what kind of person he is, right? And said, verse 19, So, you too, please stay here tonight, that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, If the men have come to call you, rise, go with them, but only do what I tell you. So let's go back to the first time when he actually asked. When he came to the Lord, what did God say? What did God say? What's the first thing God said? Verse 9. God came to Balaam and said, Who are these men with you? I'm going to ask you this. Why God is asking? He doesn't know who these people are? He's just curious, wants to know who these people are coming to Balaam? Who do you think? God does not know and he's curious of who these people are? Or he knows who they are, but he's asking him? Yeah, obviously God knows who these people are, right? But he's actually testing Balaam. Who are these people? Right? And obviously he tells him the truth. Well, these are the people who came from, Moab and asking for, for me to just, curse the Israelites, your people. And the second time, God did not ask anymore, who are these people? But he said, go with them. Second time, but with conditions. Do what I command you to do. Nothing more, nothing less. Just do the way I tell you to do. That's it. And then, God came to Balaam at night and said to him, If the men have come to call you, rise, go with them, but only do what I tell you. So Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the princes of Moab. The next scene, it is where it's just very confusing and we're just don't understand what the hell happened here. But God told him to go, and then he just prepared himself. He just packed up and ready to go, and he just started to just like go. And then, the God's angel showed up and blocking him, and he drew the sword out and is standing in front of the narrow path. So the donkey cannot go anywhere. And what's surprising here is, for the first time, I did not know when I was actually watching cartoon when I was young, when I was actually watching, it's like Disney cartoons or like, Tom and Jerry's and stuff like that, and all this mouse and cats and, is talking. And when I was reading through, I see. This is where the story came from. Animal can talk. And the funny part is, Balaam, I guess like he is the prophet, he's not surprised at all. He didn't freak out. It's like, oh my God, the animals are talking. He's not even surprised. He was just talking like he's talked to normal people, right? So donkey saw there was the man of God was standing there and drew the sword out, but obviously Balaam did not see. Even though he was a prophet, he could not see. There was the angel was standing in front of him. So donkey saw the angel of God, drew the sword. Obviously he was trying to just took him against the wall and then scratched his feet, and he was so upset. It's like, what is this donkey's doing? So he was like, he took the staff and he started to like patting on this donkey, and God opened donkey's mouth and it said, "Why are you hitting me? I'm trying to save you." And it said, if I don't have thank God that I don't have a sword with me. If I did, I would have killed you. It's like, what have I done wrong? I mean, I've been serving you for all these years. Like, have I not treated you well? I said, well, you treated me well, but why are you acting up like this? So the question is, going back, God told him to go, and why God is stopping him? Well, that's the puzzle, which is the question that, Yunsu actually asked. And there is a reason. The reason that we can actually figure, we'll get to see more. But verse 20, going back again, so Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the prince of Moab. Which means, now he got the answer from the Lord to go. When he heard to go, what does that mean to him? What does that mean to him? When he got the answer from the Lord to go, what does that mean to him, mean to Balaam? Mm-hmm. What is it for him? Okay, you're missing out something here. So the prince was sent by the Balak, right? And what did they say to Balaam? If you come with me, we will give you gold, silver, we will honor you. When he goes, what will he get? Everything. Will he be excited? Okay. So let's look at it more carefully. So obviously for him, if he goes, when God said go, and obviously for him, well, okay, now I'm going to get gold, I'm going to get silver, I'll get honored. Okay? So, all right, good. You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You listen to the Lord, you get all the treasures that's been promised. Okay? And then when you look at it, he packed up everything in the morning. Why? He was excited. Let's go. I got the answer from the Lord. Let's go. Right? He was so excited. And when God saw that, and he was upset. Now I see you. I see what you want. So he was upset. What are you doing? And God sent the angels to him to stop him. What are you doing? And he was completely blinded by the money and the fame and honor that he was promised to him. He was so anxious and he was so pumped up. Let's go. Let's do it. Okay? Let's continue on. Let's see what he says. Continue on. All right? And then, after he stopped it, but at the end, the angel said, go. Right? So, verse 34, and 33 and 34. The donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely just now I would have killed you and let her live. I would have killed you. Then Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I did not know that you stood in the road against me. Now therefore, if it is evil in your sight, I will turn back. And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with them, and speak only the word that I tell you. So Balaam went on with the prince of Balak. It's not like the angel of the Lord stopped him completely. He stopped him first, but let him go. But the word he said is almost exactly the same thing what God said. Right? You go, but do as I said. Don't do anything more or less. So, when you look at verse 32, and the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to oppose you, because your way is perverse before me. Your way, what way? God saw what's in his heart. Your way is perverse. So his way was different than how we are reading. Okay? And then, when he went there to Balak, right? Listen to what he says. Verse 37. And Balak said to Balaam, did I not send you to call you? Why did you not come to me? And I am not able to honor you? Am I not able to honor you? Balaam said to Balak, behold, I have come to you. Have I now any power? I have come to you. Have I now any power of my own to speak anything? The word that God puts in my mouth that I must speak. So he speaks very highly, saying, well, okay, I came here, but Balak, I will tell you up front, I could only do what God told me to do. I can't do anything more. Sounds very, very, righteous. He sounds very righteous. And then surely he actually set the altars, 7 altars, and then gave the burnt offering. And then when he stood up, in verse 4 in chapter 23, and God met Balaam, and Balaam said to him, I have arranged the 7 altars, and I have offered on each altar a bull and a ram. And the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return to Balak, and though you shall speak. And then he utters the oracles to Balak. And literally he blessed the Israel. So Balak obviously was upset. What are you doing? I called you to curse on them, but rather you're blessing them. Right? So he was very upset. And then, why are you blessing them? I called you to curse them. You're blessing them. So he was very upset. So he brought Balaam to a different place to see the tail end of the Israelites and had them do the same exact thing. No, this time I want you to curse. But the second time, verse 15 in chapter 23, Balaam said to Balak, stand here beside your burnt offering while I meet the Lord over there. And the Lord met Balaam and put a word in his mouth and said, return to Balak, and thou shall you speak. And God did the exactly same thing. He put the word on his mouth, and he uttered his oracle to Balak and blessed Israel again. And he did exactly what God told him to say. He did not deviate from what God said, because God put the word on his mouth. And it says, verse 19, God is not man that he should lie, or son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said, and I will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and will he not fulfill it? Behold, I receive a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot revoke it. He has not beheld misfortune in Jacob, nor he has seen trouble in Israel. The Lord their God is with them, and the shout of king is among them. God brings them out of Egypt, and is for them like the horns of the wild ox, and there is no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel. Now it shall be said of Jacob and Israel, what has God wrought? Behold, a people as a lioness is rise up, as a lion is lifts itself. It does not lie down until he has devoured a prey and drunk the blood of the slain. So he blessed again, just like God had him to bless. And then obviously Balak was even more upset. So second time in a row, you're blessing them instead of cursing them. How dare you to do this? And he said, I told you so, that I can't do anything more than what God told me to do. He has been very faithful to God. He is very obedient to God. He was not deviating from God. So from this perspective, he seemed to be a very, very faithful person. Third time, he was actually set the altar, same exact way the first time and the second time did. Chapter 24, verse 1, it said, when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he did not go as the other time to look for omens, but set his face towards the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes and saw Israel camping tribe by tribe, and the Spirit of God came upon him, and he took up his discourse and said. So this time, what did he do? So obviously, third time, he did slightly different. He did not look for omens, right? So what does that mean? The first time and the second time? No, the first and the second time, he looked for omens. Third time, he didn't. first and the second time, God put the word on his mouth, right? Third time, actually Lord put the Spirit on him. He's not Israel, he's not king, he's not God's prophet, but God put the Spirit on him, right? And let the Spirit of God speak to him. And he did. And he actually gave the oracles to the Balak and blessed the Israel. What he learned at this point is that I cannot curse Israel because the God is providing me to actually curse them. I cannot deviate from this. Which means he learned the lessons from the Lord, saying, whoever God blessed them, I cannot go against it. I cannot go against it. So which means, Balak, you listen to me. There is no way that you will be able to defeat them spiritually. You won't be able to overcome or defeat them spiritually. Because what Balak wanted was a spiritual curse. He did not ask for army. He did not ask for support. Only thing he was looking for is spiritual curse is what he wanted it. But Balaam realized, I cannot, or nor you cannot win this Israel over spiritual war. You cannot defeat them spiritually. No way. God will not allow them. God will not allow you to do so. So, verse 12, verse 11. Therefore, now flee to your own place. And I said, I will certainly honor you, but the Lord has held you back from honor. And Balaam said to Balak, did I not tell you, your messenger whom you sent to me? And if Balak should give me his house full of silver and gold, I would not be able to go beyond the word of the Lord to either good or bad of my own will. What the Lord speaks, what will I speak? And now behold, I am going to my people. Come, I will let you know what this people will do to your people in the latter days. So once again, what appears is that Balaam has been very, very faithful to the Lord, and he's been following the Lord, and he's just listening to the Lord and do it exactly what God asked him to do. Nothing more. He seems to be, he's more faithful than Israel. It is actually better than Aaron, it seems. So Balak said, I promised you with the gold and silver, and I was going to honor you, but since you're not listening to what I have to say, you go back home. I can't give you anything. I try to do that. I can't give it to you. Hold on. So let's go back here. Why did Balaam come? Why did Balaam come? What did I say before? He can kill two birds with one stone. He followed God's way and be able to actually receive gold, silver, and be honored. Right? But now, at this point, he actually uttered the God's commands, but now what he cannot have anymore? Gold and silver and being honored. Now he lost it. Right? Now he did exactly what God said, but he was going to lose all this treasure that he's expecting to get. He came all the way here, but he's not going to get it. Right? So he's upset. And he realized there's no way he cannot spiritually defeat Israel. No way. So he did exactly the same thing what we expected to see, and he's been very faithful, and he seemed to be a really righteous person, very faithful person, great. And he said, go back. So he said, all right, I'm going to go back, but I will tell you what will happen to you and the surrounding country. I will let you know. And then he uttered all this oracle again in the rest of the chapter 24. Okay? Now, chapter 25. Let's see what happened. While Israel lived in Shittim, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. These invited the people to the sacrifice of their God, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked himself to Baal of Peor. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, Take all the chiefs of people and hang them in the sun before the Lord, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. And Moses said to the judge of Israel, Each of you kill those of his men who have yoked themselves to Baal of Peor. And behold, one of the people of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman to his family in the sight of Moses, and in the sight of the whole congregations of the people of Israel, while they were weeping in the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose and left the congregation and took a spear in his hand and went after the man of Israel into the chamber and pierced both of them, the man of Israel and the woman, through her belly. Through the plague on the people of Israel was stopped. Nevertheless, those who died by the plague were 24,000. And the Lord said to Moses, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, has turned back my wrath from the people of Israel, in that he was jealous with my jealousy among them, so that I did not consume the people of Israel in my jealousy. Therefore say, Behold, I give him my covenant of peace, and it shall be to him and to his descendants after him the covenant of perpetual priesthood, because he was jealous for his God and made atonement for the people of Israel. The name of the slain man of Israel, who was killed with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, chief of father's house belonging to the Simeonites. And the name of the Midianite woman who was killed was Cosbi, the daughter of Zer, who was the tribal head of the father's house in Midian. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Harass the Midianites and strike them down, for they have harassed you with their wills, with which they beguiled you in the matter of Peor and the matter of Cosbi, the daughters of the chief of Midian, their sister, who was killed on the day of the plague on account of Peor. So after the incidents that happened with the Balaam, now what did the Israelites do? Listen to what happened, chapter 25, verse 1. While Israel lived in Sittim, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. So what happened is they started to have sexual relationship with the Midianites. Not just a sexual behavior. The reason what they did was because they were worshiping the Baal. As I mentioned in the past, the way to worship the Baal is you worship the Baal. At the end of the worshiping, you have sex with the woman who served the Baal, because that brings the blessings to the people. That's what Midianites and Moabites were believing in. So, as I mentioned, I told you in the past that worshiping the Baal is actually very pleasing, very easy, and very pleasing to the people. So once again, what did Balak wanted it? Balak wanted a spiritual curse. But Balaam could not even spiritually curse them, because God forbid them to do so. But what they started to do, they physically, not the spiritually, now started to actually have, some having physical or bodily sin. Not the spiritual sin, but now their flesh started to sin, which is very easy to do so. For the people who believe in the Lord, spiritually it's very difficult to overcome or defeat them. But physically, we're weak. So it's easy for us to be tempted bodily. Our flesh is so weak that they cannot defeat them spiritually, so they started to use their flesh, have them go against the Lord. So instead of the Moabites, that defeat them, let the God destroy them. Instead of the Moabites defeat them, let the God destroy these people. When they go against the Lord, God will be angry, that God will destroy these people. Do you follow? Their strategy has changed. Instead of spiritually defeat them, they go around, I see, we cannot overcome them, or we cannot defeat them spiritually, but instead, do it spiritually, let's do it different way. So they attacked it correct, to attack them different way. So let the God to destroy them. We don't have to do anything. Let the God destroy them, because God is jealousy God. They were going to destroy them when they actually go against the God. Which worked. Exactly planned. Because remember, this woman, the Moabite woman, who is this woman? She was the Moabite woman, the daughters of what? Midian's leader. So she was not a normal woman. She was a daughter of one of the head of the Midianites. And used her, and used sexually. And then when they actually started to worship the Baal, and what happened? God's anger rose, and God actually punished the Israel. And how many people died? Verse 9. Those who died by the plague were 24,000. Moabites did not have to touch any weapons or use their fingers to destroy Israel, but to let the God destroy them. We don't have to do anything. All we have to do is just to seduce them, tempt them, so let them destroy by themselves. So then, what does this have to do with Balaam? This has a very, very intimate relationship with Balaam. This strategy, the new strategy that the Midianites and the Moabites were using, came from this plan, this plague came from Balaam. How do we know that? Is what we're going to find out. First of all, let's find out what happened. So let's go to, unfortunately, we won't be able to find these answers in the New Old Testament. We have to find these clues from New Testament. Now, let's go to 2 Peter. 2 Peter chapter 2. 2 Peter chapter 2. But false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you, who will secretly bring in destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them, bringing upon themselves the swift destructions, and many will follow their sensuality, and because of them the way of the truth will be blasphemed. And in their greed they will exploit you with false word. Their condemnations from long ago is not idle, and their destruction is not asleep. So what is he talking about? What is Peter talking about? He's talking about the false prophets, right? Continue on. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chain of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, herald of righteousness, when 7 others, when he brought the flood upon the word of the ungodly, if the turning the city of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes, he condemned them to extinction, making them an examples of what is going to happen to the ungodly. And if he rescued righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked, for as that righteous man lived among them day after day, he was tormenting his righteous soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. Then the Lord knew how to rescue the godly from trials, and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the day of judgment, and especially those who indulge in the lust of defiling passions and despise authority. Behold, and willful, they do not tremble as they blaspheme of glorious ones, whereas angels through greater in might and power do not pronounce blasphemous judgment against them before the Lord. But these, like irrational animals, creatures, and instinct born to be caught and destroyed, blaspheming about matters of which they are ignorant, will also be destroyed in their destructions, suffering wrong as the wage of their wrongdoing. They count it pleasure to rebel in the daytime. They are blood and blemish, revealing in their deceptions while they feast with you. They have eyes full of adultery, insatiable for sins. They entice unsteady souls. They have a heart trained in greed, accursed children. Forsaking the right way, they have gone astray. They have followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the gain from wrongdoing, but was rebuked for his own transgressions. A speechless donkey spoke with human voice and restrained the prophet's madness. What is he saying? What way? Forsaking the right way, they have gone astray. They have followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the gain from wrongdoing. Okay? Peter is saying he was pleased to gain the things that he wanted, which is what originally he wanted: gold, silver, and fames and honors. That was his way. Although he acted like the righteous, but in the behind, in his heart, there was a completely different things in his heart. What is this topic about? About false prophets. It appeared to be a real prophet, but they are false prophets. Do you understand? Now continue on. Let's take a look at Jude. Oh, yeah. Jude. We're going to read from verse 10. But these people blaspheme all that they do not understand. They are destroyed by all that they, like unreasoning animals, understand instinctively. Woe to them, for they walk in the way of a Cain and abandon themselves for the sake of gain to Balaam's error, and perished in Korah's rebellions. What is he saying? Woe to them. This is about who? Go back to verse 3. Behold, although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to write appealing to you to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints. For certain people have stepped in unnoticed, who long ago were designated for this condemnation ungodly people who pervert the grace of our God into sensuality and deny our Master, the Lord Jesus Christ. He's talking about the false teacher. While he was talking about the false teacher, what he said, Utadam, verse 11, for they walk in the way of a Cain and abandoned themselves for the sake of the gain of Balaam's error. Once again, we talked about Balaam's error. What is Balaam's error? Meaning, he had a desire to get the fame, honor, money, as if it appeared that he was actually acting like a righteous, acting like a faithful person, acting like obedience to God, but in his mind, and he was full of greed, full of disobedience. He was thinking about how to get all this money. This is why I came for. Continue on. Let's take a look at Revelations chapter 2. Revelations chapter 2, we're going to read from verse 12. We're going to read from verse 12, chapter 2, Revelations chapter 2, verse 12 and on. And to the angel of the church in Pergamum, write the word of him who has the sharp two-edged sword. I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is. Yet you hold fast my name, and you did not deny my faith, even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was killed among you, where Satan dwells. But I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold the teachings of Balaam, who taught Balak to put the stumbling block before the sons of Israel, so that they might eat food sacrificed to idols and practice sexual immorality. So where does the idea come from? In Balaam's head. He did not go back to his house. And he came back to Balak and said, hold on. I tell you, there's no way that you can defeat the Israelites spiritually. However, I will give you a different strategy. Let the Israelites invite them over to the worship of Baal, have them sexually go astray, let the God destroy them. That's the way. Men are easy to be deceived by this way. Sexually, it's very, very easy. And that idea, that strategy came from Balaam's head. Although he appeared to be a righteous and faithful and looked like he was the man who's like obedience to God, blah, blah, blah. He looked right, wow, he's the man of God, is better than Israel. But you know what? We now see the bare face of the Balaam. Okay, so we'll continue on. All right, now let's come back to Numbers again. He realized that spiritually there's no way that he can actually overpower God in different oracles than God. God put actually even the Spirit of God to speak. So he realized we cannot overcome this God. He's so powerful. He's blessing this Israel. There's no way we can defeat them spiritually. However, there's a way we can defeat them. I'll give you a tip. And in return, remember what you promised me before? Turn to Numbers chapter 31. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Avenge the people of Israel on the Midianites. Afterward you shall be gathered to your people. So Moses spoke to the people, saying, Arm men from among you for the war, and that they may go against the Midian to execute the Lord's vengeance on Midian. You shall send 1,000 from each of the tribes of Israel to the war. So there were provided out of the thousands of Israel 1,000 from each tribe, 12,000 armed for war. And Moses sent them to the war, the 1,000 from each tribe, together with Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, with vessels of the sanctuary and the trumpet for the alarm in his hand. They warred against the Midians, and the Lord commanded Moses and killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of their slain, Evi, Rakim, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. And they also killed Balaam, the son of Beor, with the sword. And the people of Israel took captive the women of the Midians and their little ones, and they took as plunder all their cattle and their flocks and all their gods and all their cities in the places where they lived, and their encampments by burned with fires, and took all the spoils and all the plunders, both of man and of a beast. Then they brought the captive and the plunder and the spoil of Moses and Eleazar the priest, and to the congregations of the people of Israel at the camp of the plains of Moab by the Jordan of Jericho. Moses and Eleazar the priest and all the chief of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. And Moses was angry with the officer of the army and the commander of thousands and the commander of the hundreds who had come from service in the war. Moses said to them, Have you let all the women live? Behold, these on Balaam's advice caused the people of Israel to act treacherously against the Lord in the incident of Peor, and so the plague came among the congregation of the Lord. Now therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has known man by lying with man. Now, you see it clearly? Whose advice? Balaam's advice. What happened to the faithful, the prophets that we saw, and what happened to like all the obedience that we have saw, that he only speak the what God told him to do so, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to turn to one more chapter. Let's take a look at Joshua chapter 13. Joshua chapter 13. Verse 21 and on. That is, all the cities of the Tableland and all the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, with whom Moses defeated with the leaders of Midian, Evi, Rakem, and Zur, Hur, and Reba, the prince of Sihon, who lived in the land, Balaam also the son of Beor, the one who practiced divinations, was killed with the sword by the people of Israel among the rest of their slain. Why? Because he was the advisor to a Midianites how to defeat the Israel. Let me give you a tip how to destroy the Israel. So what was in his heart? What was in his heart is different than what we saw. So when you look at it from the Bible and just when you look at the numbers itself, wow, look at him. Wow. Now, this is something you have to be very careful. The false prophets, false teachers, appeared to be a righteous and before the people, they're following the Lord, look like he is the most obedience to the Lord, in their heart might not be what you see. Now the question is, do you have eyes? Do you have a wisdom? Do you have a spiritual distinctions to know who are these people? How can you distinguish from the real righteous God's people versus who appear to be God's people who are not? This is why when you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10 says, 1 Corinthians chapter 12 talks about the spiritual gift, and out of the spiritual gift, there's a certain things you have to pay attention. Verse 10, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another the ability to distinguish between spirits, to another various kinds of tongues. What is it? One of the spiritual gift is what? Ability to distinguish between spirits. Today, there are a lot of false teachers and false prophets. Do you have eyes to see? Just because they are coming to church, they talk about Jesus, they do good things, can you tell whether they are false prophets or false teacher, or they are true God's people? Something to think about. Now the thing is, for us, we speak, act, talk like a God's people, but what's in my heart? What is in my heart is what I do. We have to examine ourselves. Am I the false prophets? Or am I the right prophets? God looks at our heart rather than our appearance, rather than what we do, what we say. We have to make sure that we examine ourselves. Understand? So I actually kind of deceive you as if I was kind of leading you to believe that Balaam was the most faithful person, he was the most godly person, but it is not. Any questions about the teachings that we have learned today about the Balaam? What's that? What is it? It's like a snake? Yeah. Okay. So this is why I kept saying to everyone, you don't read the Bible in a sections. If you only look at one part of the Bible, you will be completely deceived. If you don't know the Bible as a whole, you will misinterpret it, and your belief may be false. This is why you have to know the Bible as a whole, not as the sections or subset. Understand?